Hey, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator, coming back to you with another video. This video is going to be about creating your own path. I've had a peculiar journey in tackling animation and doing a lot of things related to the animation industry, so I just wanted to kind of give you some tips. You don't always have to do the same old to succeed, whether it's in animation or anything else. So there's two major instances where I created my own path. The first instance was when I got my job at BlkWmnAnimator in South Korea, and that's an animation company in South Korea. And then the second instance is when I got my adjunct professor position at Loyola University, New Orleans. So the first point, stop waiting on opportunities to come to you. So when I got my job at BlkWmnAnimator, if you haven't watched how I got my job at an animation company in South Korea, you can watch that video for the long version of the story. But pretty much I did a tour. They asked me if I had a demo reel. I eventually sent them a demo reel, and then they offered me a job. So if I had not put myself out there, I was about to leave Korea. I wanted to see what an animation studio looked like. They asked me if I had the proper kind of project to get the job, and I gave it to them, and then they offered me a job. So if I had never gone to the animation company, I would have never had that opportunity. Another point is do what you have to do to get where you need to go. So when they asked me for the demo reel, I didn't have one, and so I had to create it. And so for other people, it might be a thing of they would have been in that situation and they're like, oh man, I don't have a demo reel, I guess I lost out on that opportunity. But my idea was, oh, I don't have one, but I can create one and I will send it to you when I'm done. So I spent that time after, in between classes when I was teaching, after school, and then on the weekend I would work on my demo reel, and what was it, a couple months to the day I sent them the demo reel. And that kind of goes into why I didn't get a job in animation after I graduated, because I was continually applying for jobs, but I never had a demo reel. And that's the proper thing you need to have in the animation industry. In particular jobs, you need a demo reel to show that you can do the work. And so I was always sending out images as opposed to putting together a product to show my skill set. So sometimes people will give you a chance, like they gave me a chance, but it's much better to prepare yourself. So there have been instances where people gave me a chance. When I wanted to get back into motion graphics in 2017, I didn't have the time to create a random project to show my skill set, but somebody reached out to me about doing 3D work, and they didn't have any 3D work to give me, and they were like, oh, can you do 2D motion graphics? And I said yes, and as long as they didn't require me to prove it, then I was like, yeah, I can do it, because I know I could do it. I had done it in high school, I just hadn't done it in a long time, and I didn't have anything to show my work. But it's much better to be prepared and work on what you need for when that opportunity presents itself. And then learn that new skill to get the job you want. So currently I work at Louisiana Economic Development Fast Start, and I do a lot of machinery and what's known as hard surface modeling. But something that I would like to do is do more character, like be a character artist, do more character modeling. But I have to learn that skill set. I mean, I have the basics of a skill set. I just want to practice more, because the approach to doing hard surface modeling, where you're doing TVs and machinery and hard surface objects, is not totally different, but it's just different than doing more organic models like characters and animals and stuff like that. So I need to practice, I need to add them to my portfolio so that when I am ready to look for an opportunity as a character modeler, I can have that those images and those models to show someone. My next point is don't put yourself in a box. When I got to BlkWmnAnimator, the program they were using at the time was Softimage XSI. Not only had I not ever used Softimage, I had never heard of it. But when I worked at TurboSquid, we had a Checkmate advisory committee, and they would get feedback from different companies like Blizzard and CNN and IKEA, and when people come to work for them, what is that missing link? What is some things that is a disconnect? And one thing someone said was students feel that when they learn one program that they can only use that program. So if you learn 3ds Max, I can only model or animate in 3ds Max, when that's not true. It's just a program. You can apply, the skill set, and another program is just different tools, different hotkeys, different shortcuts that you have to use. You just have to learn, what do they name it in that program? I can do it, I just need to learn that program. So don't put yourself in a box of if you have a particular program that you use, whether that be Photoshop, or because a lot of companies also have proprietary software. So you might not be using that name brand 3D software when you start working at the company. You might have to learn Pixar's or Disney's proprietary software to do your job. So you have to go in with that mindset of, I'm learning a skill set. I'm not learning a program. My next point is get out of your comfort zone. Now, I took it a little extreme when I moved to South Korea, and I didn't really move to South Korea to get out of my comfort zone. I moved to South Korea because I had just decided that if I couldn't get a job in animation, the next best thing was to live in a foreign country. But definitely moving to a different country was getting out of my comfort zone, a totally different culture, a language that I did not speak. And then when I eventually worked for BlkWmnAnimator, most of the company, the people did not speak my language. And in my particular department, there were a couple people that can kind of speak English, but for the most part, they just spoke Korean. And so I never saw that as uncomfortable. It was inconvenient, but it wasn't uncomfortable. The two people that I remember who could speak fluent English were the vice president of the company, and she was able to help me find an apartment in Seoul, and the lady in the background department, where she was in the same room that I was in, but I didn't work with the vice president or the background lady every day. And so that was stepping outside of my comfort zone. I don't know how a lot of people who would put themselves in that position, but I was okay. I was speaking my broken Korean, and they were speaking their broken English. And you just need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's the only way you grow. I mean, as I'm learning, I'm trying to learn digital sculpting, and the way I learn is more step by step, because I'm equal parts analytical and equal parts creative. So my analytical side kind of makes my creative side suffer, because stereotypically creatives are known to be free and flowing, that stuff, but I'm not that type of creative person. So I have to really work at kind of playing around. And digital sculpting, a lot of that is just playing around with the mesh and moving stuff so that it looks right, and that is really difficult for me. So like for this Sculpt January competition that I'm participating in, I did a tutorial and created a little cute monster And because that was a step-by-step tutorial, I could create an awesome, cute monster. But as I'm participating in this Sculpt January and trying to kind of do my own thing, it's very difficult because I have to, it is a new skill, so it's going to have that difficulty, but it's also just trying to figure out, okay, what's the best next plan? What should I do next? And so I have to push through being uncomfortable, and then on the other side, I can create awesome characters and have a skill set that I can use to do a lot of things. My next piece of advice on creating your own path is take the bigger project. So when I was working at BlkWmnAnimator, I was done with my last project, and I would go to my supervisor and ask for my next project. So when I went to her, she told me, okay, you can do this snake, or you can do the Batmobile. And so I was like, I wanted to challenge myself. So I took the Batmobile, and I had to find all my reference images because they only gave me like the 3/4 view, and that wasn't enough for me to do an accurate Batmobile. And so I got all my reference images. I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I start this? Where do I start on the body of the car? And luckily, because it's a job, you have to continually push through. That's what makes it easier. It's harder to push through on your personal projects, but because it was a job, I was able to push through and complete it. And I had a Batmobile in the episode of Family Guy. And so I eventually had to do the snake. I did the snake after that one. But if I hadn't taken that Batmobile, maybe my coworker Gion, he would have probably been given the Batmobile if he was finished with a project, and then I would have just done the snake, and then what would I have done next? And so I have that under my belt, that I know I can create a complicated car in 3D. So always take the bigger project. And then my next point is to make the project bigger or better when you're given it. So something that I wish I did in college was when I was doing my animation projects, you have like these bullet points that your professor gives you, like you have to make it this theme or whatever. But sometimes I really wish that I had kind of pushed the envelope and tried to do more creative things so that I can just, college is really the perfect time to learn all that you can learn. And so, not that I did the bare minimum, because my projects would turn out nice, but I just wish I took it to another level and was able to teach myself just different things and push the envelope on my projects. Sometimes you can just tailor it to what you're interested in. You still have to, if it's a college course or if it's something that somebody needs, you probably still have to do what is required, but you can always push the envelope and push yourself more. Don't just do the bare minimum all the time. Next, I want to talk about how my second biggest way I created my path was when I landed my adjunct professor position at Loyola University, New Orleans. And so the way that I got that was just another random email. When I got my job in Korea, it was a random email. And when I got my job at Loyola, it was a random email. I was just emailing all of the universities in the New Orleans area, and I wasn't even trying to be a professor. I was actually emailing universities to see if I could come speak at their university. And so one of the deans at Loyola responded and put me in contact with the department head for the design department, and she had was willing to meet with me, and that was in the spring of 2016. I met with her, just had a really good chat. She liked my vibe. She thought I was really impressive, and then when we parted ways, she promised me by spring 2017 I want you to teach a class at Loyola. And by spring 2017, I was teaching a design topics class on 3D animation. And so I just put myself out there, and it's another thing where I didn't go in, my intention in doing it was not to get what I got. When I sent my email to BlkWmnAnimator, my intention was to do a tour. and then I got a job out of it. My intention when I sent my email to all these universities was to, oh, can I just come speak for a half hour, an hour to your students? But that got me a paid job. So putting yourself out there can bring more than you're even intending to get. And the last point I want to mention is talk about the big stuff. So, and that's sometimes even when it's not relevant anymore. So 9 years ago, I worked at an animation company in South Korea, and sometimes I still have to mention that just to get people to listen to me. I mean, when I go to networking events, you just have to make yourself seem interesting. And saying that, well, some people perk up when I say that I do animation for the state of Louisiana, just because if you're kind of in the professional world, you know that that's really random and you don't hear about people doing animation for a state agency. But it's even more impressive to say, I used to work on Family Guy, because in my personal experience, just because I look really young, and so that's like an ageism thing. I'm a woman, I'm of color, so people really don't try to talk to me at networking events. And so I try to just, if it's like a powwow where we're all introducing ourselves, I'll say some big things that I've done. Or if it's just introducing myself to someone one-on-one, sometimes I can tell that they're like kind of zoned out. And it's all, as soon as I say that I used to work on Family Guy, then all people are all in, like, okay, well, how was that? And I'm like, I noticed that you didn't care about me before, but I will continue talking to you. But so you just gotta keep mentioning the big stuff. If I mentioned that I was a professor, I mean, with me looking young, people most likely thought I was a student every time I went to class as opposed to the professor. And then even with my book, The Black Hair Alphabet, I always forget to tell people that I have a book on Amazon, because I just do a lot of things. I have a lot of accomplishments, and so I forget about stuff that I've done. And so I carry my book with me, but I always forget to bring it out. Like, oh, look at this book that I did, because it's just interesting, and it's not even about making the money from the book. It's just sharing with people a cool project that I did. And I'm really bad at talking about myself. So luckily, sometimes I have a wingman, wingwoman, where they know what I've accomplished and they'll kind of throw it in while I'm standing there being humble. But you got to mention the big stuff, because that when you mention the big stuff and then the people's ears perk up, then they're more willing to listen to you, and you can veer that into anything entrepreneurial you want to do, any job you want to have. That can kind of go into what you really need. So when you're creating your own path, the opportunities are endless. You can pretty much go in any direction when you're in control of your path. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section, or just send me email at Deborah@BlkWmnAnimator.com. I'll see you in the next video.